we need to also talk about the elephant in the room when we talk about the transatlantic relations, is the upcoming US elections. At 2 p.m. Croatian time, we had a debate between the current president Joe Biden and the former president Donald Trump. So I would like to, if we talk about issues like environment, disinformation, energy transition, and so on, we cannot talk about also the political development happening in the United States. So I would like to, Pete, to ask you. You, for example, served in the White House during the George W. Bush administration, and for the Croatian context, it's very interesting that Pete was in Zagreb 2008 when President Bush visited Croatia, after the invitation for NATO membership. So you also know Croatia a little bit. And how do you see, if we take all this into account, how do you see what will happen in the United States? Because many in parts of the world are warned that the transatlantic relations will suffer. And in what direction will it be? It a new Republican administration or a Democratic one?
Dobro jutro. Moje ime je Pete Seat, ali ovdje ja sam Petar Šejat. Moja mater rođenla u Knin, zbog to ja malo razumijem I pričam tvoj jezik, but for this I'm going to stick with my native language of English. So good morning. It's an honor to be here yet again in Croatia. As mentioned, I was in St. Mark's Square in 2008 with President George W. Bush when he visited here during that historic visit. But to kind of assess the political situation in the United States, and thank you for leaving the easy question for me, I would just broadly say right now what we are dealing with is tyranny of the minority in the United States. A minority that is convinced it is the majority because it has its views reflected by sympathetic media and proliferated by misinformation and disinformation online. On top of that, a minority who lacks any sense of shame or mutual accountability. And you see this all over the place nationally. You see it locally at county levels, at state levels as well. But it is particularly acute when it comes to foreign policy. And I am quick to say that it's on both sides of the political aisle. You see it on the left in the Democratic Party with what is taking place right now in Gaza and Israel's war with Hamas, where an element of the Democratic Party is pushing against support of Israel. And that is causing policy shifts and changes within the Biden administration, and at times causing friction between the White House and the Netanyahu government. On the right, you see it in Ukraine. And during the Republican primaries at the congressional level that we've gone, we still have some that are taking place as we speak, but the topic of Ukraine funding has become a litmus test for whether or not you support Donald Trump. If you're opposed to Ukraine funding, you're with Trump. If you're in favor of Ukraine funding, you are not. And we are seeing that. We're seeing television ads all across the country on this. Foreign policy is not a top-of-mind issue for Americans. It's the economy, it's immigration, but you're seeing this play out time and time again. And where it kind of all stems, especially from the Republican side, I am a Republican, is isolationism has become the dominant rhetorical device within the Republican Party. And I'm quick to say rhetorical. It doesn't always mean that it translates to policy. Oftentimes, the weight of responsibility comes into play, and we saw this most recently with Speaker of the U.S. House Mike Johnson, who was not himself a fan of Ukraine funding until he became second in line to the presidency and realized just how important it is to the transatlantic alliance and the security of NATO and our allies on this continent that we support Ukraine in this fight against Russia. But it took becoming Speaker of the House for that shift to happen. So what I would say is, one, I think that dynamic will continue regardless of who wins this presidential election, for which I will make no predictions. I got out of that business in 2016 because I didn't see that coming. Most of us probably didn't, so I don't do predictions anymore, other than to say that isolationism, or at least the rhetoric of isolationism, will continue. How it plays out is truly anyone's guess, but I would just say or caution you or ask you to take a step back when you either engage in or hear fear of a Trump administration. Think back to when he was elected in 2016, took office in 2017. Many of the fears at that time, he would spark World War III, the United States would pull out of NATO. How many of those things happened? None of them. Now, I'm not saying everything was perfect. I'm not saying it was all rainbows, puppies, and unicorns. But a lot of the worst that was predicted, that was forecasted, did not happen. Now, I hear all the time, well, yeah, but this time he really means it. Does he? I don't know. So do what we're wanting everyone else to do. Tom is right about misinformation and disinformation. Check your sources. We all need to do the same thing. We need to take a breath when we hear something or read something and think about the context, think about the history and where we stand today, and whether or not it is realistic that it may play out the way some people say it may or may not.